Good evening, CPP family. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am going to share my screen with you now and talk you through our potential reopening plan at the high school. So please let me know if, Linda, could you let me know if you guys can see the screen all right?
Looks great, thank you.
All right, thank you. So tonight I asked that you use the Q&A feature on the screen to enter your questions. If you do see your question go away, that's because we are recording them and they might disappear. So you don't need to ask the question again. And Linda Perry, who you just heard speak, she is the Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, and she's going to be helping me out this evening. In addition, I have Robin Sheehan here, who's the executive principal at the high school, and Jennifer Batzing, who is kind of doing double role these last few months. She's the director of PPS and will be the assistant superintendent for elementary education. And then our question moderator this evening is Brian Kelly. So I thank all of them for being here today. And I also thank Mike Simmons for helping set this up and for providing us with a little music to start. So let's get to this. A couple weeks ago, as you know, the governor sent out new guidance, New York State Department of Health guidance, and that was shared the Friday of our spring break week. And we were very excited to get it at the time. We thought it would move us from 3 feet to 6 feet, or from 6 feet to 3 feet, and allow all of our students to come back. And we've had many hurdles since then to try and make that happen. So I'd like to discuss the clarifications from the state with you tonight and the county regarding that interim guidance. I'm going to show you specifically in the guidance where we have some wiggle room to bring our high school students to 4 days a week instead of 2. I'm going to share our plan, and I'd really love to answer any questions that you have. I know some of you have had the opportunity to answer the survey already that Mrs. Sheehan sent home in an email yesterday. What we would like for you to be able to answer that survey for us within the next 24, I think, to 36 hours, so that we would be able to potentially bring our students to 4 days a week on Monday, May 3rd. So here's where the clarification and the advocacy from all of you came into play. On page 8 of the guidance, it very clearly states that if you're in a county with a high risk of transmission, the elementary schools can come back to 3 feet distancing if they can cohort. And middle school and high school can remain at 3 feet if they can cohort, which our middle school does cohort, which you've seen they were able to open this week. But when schools can't maintain that cohorting, then they can't open. That's where our original plan derived from in terms of moving our students from 6 feet to 3 feet. That's why we were able to bring our K-8 students back on Monday, this past Monday. And we worked with the public health department to make sure that they agreed with our definition of the cohorting language, which they did. We know that our high school kids cannot cohort. It's one of the blessings of having 90 plus electives at our high school. Our kids get to be very individualized and take courses that they need. And we needed to get some feedback and share our plan with families in the community and our district leaders. And what has been happening is that group has been advocating outside of us to our local legislators, to our local county Department of Health, to the New York State Department of Health, and even our governor's office that's based in Binghamton. So there's been a lot of advocacy from our families, and we appreciate your support. So on a call with the state, they walked through this guidance, and there was a leniency kind of clause put in on page 9. And I cut and pasted it for you here in this presentation so you can see it for yourself. In bold there, it says, ultimately, the school or district's decision to move to shorter physical distances will come down to a local community's risk tolerance based on its unique circumstances. we made sure that we confirmed this language, not just with the New York State Department of Health and the State Education Department, but also with our county officials at the Department of Health and with our attorneys and the board. So our team met with public health to determine what would it look like. What could we do to make sure that our students were safe, our staff were safe, our teachers and admin were safe, and still be able to offer our students more in-person opportunities that they have right now, similar to what our neighboring school districts are offering their kids. So we needed to survey our families first to make sure that you all are comfortable with the plan. So that's where this survey that we sent out to you are derived from. And again, that survey came to you yesterday from Mrs. Sheehan's office. We also want to create a safety measure that we will use to determine if we need to move back to our 2-day hybrid model. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what those two metrics are. So I want to be clear before we start, though, that our high school numbers are going up. They're going up in our 2-day model. We weren't anticipating these numbers going up after break. Since the weekend of break, April 12th through the 27th, we had 13 students who tested positive for COVID. All of those students were traced back to incidents that did not take place in school. Because there are 13 students, that means our quarantine numbers are up as well. Again, we confirmed today with the Department of Health that the positive students that we're seeing have all been able to be traced back to events that occurred outside of school, outside of the classroom. So our health and safety processes and procedures in our buildings are working. And right now, our positivity rate at the high school is 0.8%. The CDC put out this chart to look at being able to open uncohorted. And the guidance had said, if you're in the yellow zone for one of the measures and you're in the red zone for the other measure, you have to use the red measure. What that flexibility on page 9 allowed us is for us to create measures that work for our individual district. So what we would like to use is the line that's below. Where is our county in terms of positives over the past 7 days? So I can give you an example. Last week, Steuben County was at 6.2%, which puts us in the yellow zone. And I already shared with you that our high school was at 0.8%. Also not even on the chart for something that we would need to look at closing for. So what we would like to do is put these two metrics in place, and we would report out on these every Friday. We would look at the positivity rate in the county. And if you look back at this chart, if you go through to the orange zone, which still allows you to be open uncohorted, it's 9.9% is the highest rate that it could go. And internally, we would put in a positivity rate of 2% at our high school. So we would look at both of those factors each Friday to determine whether we would stay in our 4-day model or move back to our 2-day model. You have since September received phone calls from Mrs. Sheehan if we've had a positive case in the school. What we'd like to do is align those phone calls with our Friday updates so that you get one call per week in terms of what the county's positive is, our high school's positivity rate is, and how many positive cases we had that week in school. So we would streamline that for you. And again, if these two metrics couldn't be met, then we would move back to our hybrid model. So here's our plan as of now. Beginning on May 3rd, we're excited to bring some of our high school students back to 4 days in person, but we do want to offer the following options for families. Families can remain in their cohort A or B model, so that does not have to change if families feel secure in that plan. Families can remain in cohort C if they would like to. And then families also have the option to move 4 days a week. And our Wednesday schedule will remain the same. And I'll clarify Wednesday, we use the morning time on Wednesdays to prepare for our virtual students who are in cohort C. So it's important for us to keep that Wednesday time in place with the shortened day for our students on Wednesday. So for families who are feeling uncomfortable with 4 days a week, we thought at the high school, because we have more flexibility without the cohorting, to make some of our own standards of procedures, that allowing families that 2 days in may be an option that they really want to consider. That still does give 5 days in between cohorting. And if there happen to be positive cases in our school, that tracing goes back 48 hours. And if you stay in that window of your 2 days, you're giving yourself that buffer as a family. So we understand that there are multiple needs and desires and wants across the district. And we're trying to offer some opportunities to meet each family's really level of acceptance for this. So some of the things that we considered, and when discussing bringing back our families. Like I said, outside factors, number of positives in our community are increasing right now. We know that they're increasing. We're also aware that family and friend gatherings outside of school are having an impact on students and staff in our school community. And it's unfortunate, but we cannot monitor the events happening outside of the school day. We have to focus on what's happening during the school day. Because the number of positives in our community are increasing, then the number of students in quarantine is increasing right now as well. These two factors affect our students and staff in any of our in-person models. They're increasing now in our 2-day model. They'll increase in our 4-day model. They aren't going to increase more, however, in our 4-day model. And I'll talk a little bit about why that's happening in a future slide. What we can control is what's happening in our buildings, and those are the things that we're focusing on. You knew that over break, we started to move our furniture back into our rooms. We made sure that they were 3 feet away from each other. We made sure that we had the appropriate hand sanitizers, washing stations, wipes for surfaces, and our custodial crews, a management of time throughout the day, focused on what we know to be working in our schools. So we're ready for that. I want to talk a little bit about a face mask wearing change and a screening revision. So as you know, this is one of the things we were not prepared for. We did not know that this was going to be part of the guidance. However, for us to be in person at all, we have to make this change. So face masks need to be worn at all times. Face masks must be worn on the bus at all times. At lunch and snack time, obviously they can be taken off. Students can drink from their water bottles all day long, so they can take those mask breaks when it's appropriate for them to do so. They also made a change to what's acceptable in terms of gaiters. All face masks, masking stayed the same except for gaiters. They'd like gaiters to be doubled up instead of single ply at this time. Our screening process only works if people are honest while filling it out. And although things are starting to open up across New York State and across the United States, these factors still have to be considered. So these symptoms are symptoms that you still need to stay home for. So when you're answering the screener as a parent for your child, or if your child is answering the screener for themselves, it's incredibly important for them to stay home if they have any of these symptoms. So we need to remain vigilant, and we're going to continue our temp checks as students walk in. I understand, and we all understand the temptation for our students who are in high school to think a headache's just a headache and take that chance to still come to school. But we really need to be able to keep our schools open. And the best way for us to be able to do that is for our students and our staff to make sure they're being honest on the screen. So how does tracing change? Because, when you initially think, oh, we're doubling the amount of kids that are coming back, which we won't be, because we know that some parents will want to stay in that virtual C model. We know that some of our families will want to stay in their AB cohort. Tracing changes though, because feet change. So if we move to 3 feet, how will tracing take place? We're going to continue to work with Steuben County Public Health Department. They will let us know when someone has been verified as a positive. We will trace that student throughout the course of the day, and we provide the Public Health Department with that information, and they contact families as well as we will contact families to let them know. How long do I have to be in contact with a person who's positive to be quarantined? So you're going to see a shift. It is within 6 feet for more than 10 minutes. We use that 10-minute mark. So it's within 6 feet for that 10 minutes or more each day. One of the guidelines that is going away is that 12 foot for more than an hour. That guidance is being discontinued because we're moving into that 3 feet, 6 feet guideline. So what we will use to trace is if you have been in the space with someone within 6 feet for more than 10 minutes. No other guidelines will be used at this time. One of the things that you could do as families to help with your students who are 16 and 17 is to have them vaccinated. We're going to have a vaccination clinic on Thursday, April 29th in the evening at 5 to 7:30. 5 to 6:30. Actually, it might be 5 to 7:30, so I might have to change this. Why is this important for your student? So I think that the benefit of our students being fully vaccinated, the same as our staff at this point, is that if they are in contact with someone who is positive, they do not have to quarantine for the 10 days. So if a student in our school attends the vaccination clinic on April 29th, they will be considered fully vaccinated on June 3rd. And that is before a lot of the end of year activities that we have planned, such as prom and graduation. A parent does have to be present for a student to receive, a 16 or 17-year-old to receive the vaccination. One of the things I want to make sure that you know is that we still are following the HIPAA privacy rules. So we do not track vaccinations in our student records for COVID. The only time a family would have to provide that information is if they were a contact of a positive. Then they could share with the county that their student has been vaccinated or not. Or they could share with the school so that our head nurse, Ann Stefanini, knew that they were fully vaccinated and would not have to turn their name in to the county because we knew they were. So we want to make sure that we aren't recording these things, we aren't keeping track of these things, and we don't need the information. We would ask that you share that information with the county if in fact your child was part of a tracing issue with someone who had been deemed positive or was positive. So next steps for us, we completed and posted our reopening plan on our district webpage, and we also submitted it to the NICEAD business portal. We're sharing our plan with Steuben County Health Department. As you know, you should have received that survey yesterday from Mrs. Sheehan. We're holding this town hall tonight, and I'll be taking questions in just a minute. We're also holding an open Q&A for high school teachers and staff tomorrow morning at 8. And we're going to continue to do what we've done all year long. As guidelines shift, we have to problem solve and figure out how we're going to shift internally to meet those guidelines so that we can have our students in school. And we're going to continue to do that. So we're going to meet those challenges that are necessary to safely move our students to 4 days in person. We are looking for our families to help us determine next steps, and we need you to do that through the survey. We will close that survey out Thursday morning so that our transportation department and our high school team can start managing what Monday morning will look like for our schools. We've had a very successful 2 days in K-8. It was amazing energy in our schools on Monday and Tuesday. I even was happy to be sitting in traffic at the middle school in the morning. It reminded me of days when we had all of our students there. So regardless of if you choose for your student to be in 4 days, in 2 days, or virtual this year, we just want you to feel comfortable with the plan. The guidelines are the guidelines, and we've been able to meet them so far. But we want you to feel safe sending your kids to school. So I'm going to take some questions now, Linda, from the group.
Sure, we have a few of them. First one is about the current peak that we're in. It seems like we're in the midst of a little peak at the high school. Are we considering letting this peak pass before going back to 4 days a week?
So if the peak was just at our high school, I think we would consider that. Unfortunately, the peak is not just in Steuben County, it's really across New York State. And because none of our cases can be traced to school, to our classroom time, we don't feel at this point that it will pass. I do think we'll probably see an increase as summer comes. More people are doing things together and outside, and it's hard to monitor and manage what's happening outside of us.
This is a question about the case rates and the metrics that we're setting as a district. The Steuben County is using a positivity rate with the number of positives compared to the number of people tested. Can you walk us through slide 8 again? Are we using that same formula?
So I will go back to that slide for you for a second. So the CDC, when they put out this chart, they're doing two different things on this chart. The top line is really looking at, in the past 77 days, what is the percentage per 1,000 persons? So that's where you get that number that if you have over 100 cases in your county that you're in the red zone. The lower line, however, is a rolling 7-day average. So it is more accurate to what's happening real time in your community. So that's why we decided to look at that bottom line as our factor, because that's more specific to Steuben County, to our Corning area specifically. So that's why we're using that lower indicator instead of the upper indicator. Our Steuben County is very large. It starts in Hornell, and goes all the way to our neighboring school districts in the Big Flats and past area. So we wanted our markers to be closer to home and to be more specific to us. So that's why we chose to use that rolling 7-day average. And we also chose to put in a stricter modification for our high school only, using that 2% per week. So we would look at a Friday to Friday view of our own population in our own community to determine whether we would stay in the 4 days or 2 days.
So can you clarify where our numbers are right now? Are we at 13 positives or 17?
So those numbers I shared with you were last week's numbers. We had 13. This week we have 5. for 5 current cases. So last week we had 13. This week we have 5. And we would look at a Friday to Friday view.
This is a different question. This is about scheduling. Can students who are currently in cohort C, our fully virtual students, choose to come back in person just 2 days a week? Could they join a cohort A or B instead of coming back 4 days?
I believe that that is possible. We haven't talked that through completely. Robin, do you see any reason why we wouldn't be able to do that?
I do feel like we can do that, yes. We're ready to shift to that at any point.
Thank you.
It is a choice on the survey. In the 3rd section of the survey, you have 3 choices, and one is to come back 2 days a week in person, 4 days a week, or fully remote. Someone asked where that was. It's right after your names in the survey. Section 3 asks your name, your grade, and then there are those 3 choices.
Thank you, Linda.
This is a question about the timing of a commitment. When do we need to make our final decision about what we're going to do? After we fill out the survey, or can we change our decision before May 3rd?
The survey will be closing on Thursday. That you can contact your school counselor to let them know if you're making a change. We really would like to have the information for transportation reasons ahead of time, especially if your student takes a bus to school. But that survey will close on Thursday morning. You have some flexibility over the next few days for your family to make a decision, but we could run into a few transportation issues that first day if you wait too long to let us know.
Could a family come 2 days and try it out for a few weeks with the 3-foot piece, and if they're feeling safe, increase to 4 at a later date?
Yes.
Let's look at contact tracing again, just to clarify. If a student is in class and is positive, and the 2 students to the left, 2 to the right, 2 to the back, and 2 in front are quarantined, is that because it's 6 feet for 10 minutes?
Yeah, so actually the terminology that they use is, for tracing is contiguous. So the way we have our desks and set up in our rooms, there's a little more than 6 feet. We're working on having them be a little more than 6 feet away. So really, if you were the positive person in seat, the seat in the middle, it would really be the 4 people that were around you in front and back and to the sides of you that would be considered quarantined people. And there may be some spaces in the building that fluctuate a little bit around that, but that is how we are going to trace when we move. So really, when we were 6 feet, we used the 12-foot distance, and now that we're at 3 feet, we would use the 6-foot distance. So you're just looking at the immediate people around you.
Looking at the current uptick, are we seeing a peak because of sports? I've heard that the recent uptick is about sports. So the question really is, if that's true, are we looking at changing our current protocols to slow the spread with athletics?
Sure. Actually, our latest uptick was not because of sports. It was because of a gathering outside of school. Some of our quarantined students may have been because they were on a bus with the student that was positive, but it was not a situation that was traced back to a game or an event that the sports teams were on. It was traced to an event, again, that happened outside of school and outside of athletics.
Questions about masks regarding band and chorus. Will masks be required in band and chorus?
So the guidance did shift in terms of PE and music. They shifted from 12 feet to 6 feet. There are still, if you're playing a wind instrument, obviously you have to take your mask off to be able to do that. There's still some clarification needed around singing. Right now, we believe that we originally believed that masks could be removed for singing. However, it sounds like the guidance is going to be clarified that you have to wear masks inside at 6 feet for singing, but we are still waiting on a confirmation of that.
Question about our training for masks. Are we going to repeat the trainings around masks, and will that be for staff and students?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, our head nurse updated our videos this weekend, this past weekend. So our K-8 students had the opportunity to see 3 of those videos this week. There's a mask wearing version. There is a sneezing and coughing version, and there's a hand washing version. So we will share those as well at the high school.
And back to the metrics, this one's tricky for us. I think there's still some questions on metrics. When you say that we are at 0.8%, are you taking the percentage of positive students divided by the number of students in the school?
Yes, actually, we aren't just using students, we're using students and staff. Because sometimes a positive may be a staff member, not just a student. So we're using the total population number at just the high school divided by the positive cases that we have from Friday to Friday.
And that's the end of our questions.
All right. So thank you once again for spending your evening with me, at least with us, this hour, making sure that you're getting clarification on the questions that you need to have answered. And again, we are looking forward to having our kids back to 4 days in person. We know that we're best when we're together. And we also want to make sure that we're doing it safely. So we will monitor this very carefully. And if you have other questions, you can reach out to Mrs. Sheehan at the high school. You can email me at ask@cpp.com. We're both very good at getting back to people with their questions. So please just let us know as you spend some time further thinking about this. I encourage you to answer the survey. If you can by Thursday morning, we'd appreciate it. That will really help us with our planning. And we'll continue with our K-8 kids and watch that progress as well. Thank you and have a good evening.